In this lesson, we're going to talk about working with pre- and post-deployment scripts. When we're working with database development, it's entirely possible that we will need to take some actions before our deployment can begin or after it is complete. There are certainly cases in both the migration and the state-based development models where the development process doesn't really address every technical issue or it doesn't address every situation, and we need some additional processing. In these cases, developers often use pre- or post scripts that will handle any ad hoc programming they may need for a deployment. Now, this is easy if you have a consistent set of programming that needs to occur every time you do a deployment. But if you have to change the way you work for a single deployment, then your developers are constantly updating and changing this script, which can get a little bit confusing and a little bit cumbersome. As long as the code is tested, this may not be an issue, but it does introduce variability into your development process, especially if you depend upon a certain part of the pre-deployment script always executing. For example, let's suppose you're disabling a job before you run a deployment. We always want to make sure that happens, and if somebody changes a script, that could be problematic. We do want all of our pre- and post scripts to be version controlled, which allows them to be updated as needed, but in many cases, there's only one pre- and post script for all deployments. So one pre-deployment script and one post-deployment script. And that can be challenging. Since a package is usually built from the latest version of the script, it's possible that somebody adds or removes items that causes issues. That means that you have to be very careful when you're changing your pre- and post scripts and have full transparency with the entire team so that everybody is aware of what version is being used. Let's look at an example. Imagine I'm working on version 1 of my pre-deployment script. It's going to manage something like turn off a job. It needs to happen before I make table changes. Suppose my changes don't get deployed this week and later on somebody performs some additional development and they decide they're going to update the pre-deployment script to handle their changes. Perhaps they're going to disable a constraint and they'll add it back in the post script. Now the script is at version 2. That may or may not be compatible with my version 1 changes. Perhaps I need that job disabled and they've removed it. We have to test and ensure that any issues are discovered. We certainly have to ensure that all the changes being made in our deployment are handled in the pre- and post scripts. But this example kind of highlights where these scripts can be cumbersome or difficult for us to deal with and where we could actually have problems in release if we have not actually communicated to everybody what's being changed in these scripts. There are systems that allow for multiple pre- and post scripts to be executed, and that works great as long as I can easily link which scripts run to which deployment. Then I have to make sure my release system knows how to choose the correct versions or the correct scripts for each deployment. If that happens, we usually don't have any issues, but it is a place where we will have to experiment and understand how our system works. Now we need to make sure that the process we implement in our release management tool is aware of which scripts to choose with some token, some naming, something else, and then we want to make sure that our developers and DBAs understand how to link the appropriate scripts to each deployment.